Welcome back after a week off and happy Easter. We're a little behind this week. Pam Bondi is out as Attorney General and an F-15 was shot down in Iran. Are we close to the end of the Iran war? All that and more right now. Welcome back to the Republic Brothers podcast. He's Matt, I'm Mike. Today is April 8th, 2026, and this is episode 48. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next episode next Thursday. Now, we have a lot going on in Operation Epic Fury. I want to start with Trump's ultimatum to Iran a few days ago that led to Iran trying to use human shields around their power plants. Now, we said this when we talked about the missile hitting that school. Iran will use civilians as shields, and here's the proof. How do you feel about President Trump targeting bridges and their infrastructure?
They know we don't want to shoot at civilians, which is why they use them as the shield. The question is whether or not that infrastructure is a military target. If military equipment is crossing that bridge, then it is a reasonable target. We actually didn't target many bridges or power plants, since the ceasefire was announced just in time. I have some doubts it will hold for more than a few days, but I have no issue shooting at some infrastructure. Keeping in mind, during every conflict before this one, energy infrastructure is usually the first target. The main objective is usually to starve the enemy of oil and gas. That is a quick way to win if you can successfully do that. That did not happen this time because the U.S. and Israel didn't want to shock the oil market too badly, knowing how much it would hurt some of our allies, regardless of how useless they are.
Yeah, I agree with you. Trump is showing some power here. I would hope that Iran understands that he means business and he's no Jimmy Carter. I saw this clip earlier from Ben Shapiro that I want to play. This gives you a little bit of history into how long Iran has been after us.
In November of 1979, radical Iranian students, with the blessing of the new regime, stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and seized 52 American diplomats and staff as hostages. This would become the first great test of American will in the Middle East with regard to the new Iranian regime. And President Jimmy Carter completely failed. He wrung his hands, he botched a rescue mission, and then he spent the rest of his term begging the Ayatollahs for mercy. For 444 days, a year and 79 days, the Iranian regime humiliated the United States on live television. Jimmy Carter tried asking nicely for our citizens back. He sat in the Oval Office looking impotent. The Ayatollahs learned a very crucial lesson. Having a weak American president was useful, and you could take hostages and basically do what you wanted. The Iranian hostage crisis was American weakness embodied on the global stage. Well, how do we know? Well, literally the very moment that Ronald Reagan was sworn into office as president, they released the hostages. Weird how that works. The Ayatollahs looked at Ronald Reagan, who projected strength, and realized that they had a problem, so they backed down. Papers were signed, the hostages were put on a plane, our fellow Americans finally came back home. This is a basic tenet of reality-based foreign policy. Strength deters, weakness invites aggression.
Spot on from Ben Shapiro there. The only language dictators know is strength and aggression. If they see you as weak, they will try to take advantage of that and get concessions from you. Vladimir Putin does it. Xi Jinping is the same. They are seeing strength from Trump, but they were used to the Biden and Obama ways. They are having to adjust their way of doing business with America now.
Let's talk about the F-15E Strike Eagle that was shot down in Iran. Obviously, this happened several days ago, but we haven't recorded since then, and I think this is too good of a story to not bring up. Friday, April 3rd, 2026, over the mountainous region of southwestern Iran, an F-15 was reportedly hit by a shoulder-fired missile during a mission. Both crew members successfully ejected but landed miles apart in hostile territory. The pilot was located and extracted relatively quickly compared to his weapon system operator. U.S. military helicopters moved in under fire. One of the rescue helicopters was hit by a small arms fire, resulting in injuries to some crew members on board. The WSO, who was seriously injured during the ejection, evaded capture for over 48 hours. He reportedly hid on a 7,000-foot ridge in the Zagros Mountains, armed only with his sidearm. The IRGC launched a massive manhunt offering a $60,000 reward to local nomadic tribes for information. At one point, Iranian forces reportedly came within 2 miles of his location. To get the colonel out, the U.S. launched a multifaceted operation involving over 150 aircraft and elite special operations teams, including Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. The CIA reportedly ran a deception campaign inside Iran, spreading false rumors that the airmen had already been captured or moved. This was aimed at confusing Iranian commanders and thinning out their search patterns. On Sunday, April 5th, he was successfully rescued and loaded onto a transport plane. 2 MC-130J Commando 2 transport planes became stuck in the soft ground at a makeshift airstrip. To prevent them from falling into Iranian hands, U.S. forces blew them up before leaving. 1 A-10 Thunderbolt II was shot down, 2 Black Hawk helicopters were significantly damaged by ground fire. Analysts estimate the total cost of the operation was between $210 million and $310 million. Here was General Kane talking about the rescue mission.
From the backseater, Dude 44 Bravo, whose pure and unadulterated joy at seeing those helicopters come into the valley to get his front seater in daylight because he knew the front seater did not have a jacket, and was so filled with heart-leaping joy at his front seater getting picked up, to the nighttime folks that went in and then got him, to the tanker forces that did the things that they had to do to give their own gas away to the support packages, to those that went into the desert landing site not once, not twice, but 3 times as we fought through multiple contingencies. This was and is a joint force that has the guts to try, that does not quit, and who each and every day does the things that we must to dare to win.
Hundreds of millions of dollars sounds like a lot, but imagine how bad this would have been if the IRGC got to him first. This goes to show when we say no man left behind, we mean it. It was great work by our military to get to him first and get him out, so we didn't have another hostage situation. That would have put Trump in a terrible position and would almost certainly have doomed Republicans in the next couple elections.
Knowing everything we know now, you're right. This was exceptional work from our military. We said at the start of this conflict that the less casualties, the better. I don't care that it cost $300 million to get him back. And if this was someone related to you, you wouldn't care either. Mark my words, there will be a movie made about this one day.
It is the kind of story that people would love. And yeah, great work by the military. Probably reassuring to our service members as well that we will always come for you. If we could pull this off, there probably aren't many places we couldn't rescue you from.
Now, before we break down the peace plan from Iran, I want to play 2 clips. First, from Vice President J.D. Vance talking about the ceasefire and saying that we're headed in the right direction. And then the second, from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, saying that we've essentially won.
There are good developments here. And let me just say a few things. First of all, what the president set out to do was decimate the Iranian military, decimate their ability to wage conventional war. And that military objective, as the president said yesterday, as I said yesterday, has been achieved. And because of that, what the president did is he basically issued an ultimatum to the Iranians. He said, open up the straits, stop trying to hold the world's economy hostage, and we'll engage in a ceasefire. And that's exactly the agreement that we came to last night. The Iranians have agreed to open up the straits. The United States has agreed to stop attacking. And that, not just the United States, but also our allies, have agreed to stop attacking. And that is the basis of this fragile truce that we have, which is now, 8 to 12 hours old.
Iran has been a threat to the United States and the free world for 47 years. Chants of death to America, targeting our people, killing Americans, lying and blackmailing their way toward a nuclear weapon, so they thought. No longer. Not on our watch. Other presidents marked time and kicked the can down the road. President Trump made history. From the strike that took out Qasem Soleimani to tearing up the disastrous Obama-Iran deal, to the precision campaign that obliterated Iran's nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer, to the decisive military victory we just achieved in Operation Epic Fury. No other president has shown the courage and resolve of this commander-in-chief. President Trump forged this moment. Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it. As the President truth this morning, a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory. By any measure, Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. You see, in less than 40 days, one of our combatant commands, Central Command, CENTCOM, using less than 10% of America's total combat power, dismantled one of the world's largest militaries. The world's leading state sponsor of terrorism proved utterly incapable of defending itself, its people, or its territory. We untied just a fraction of our strength, and Iran suffered a devastating military defeat.
Now, Matt, I want to ask your opinion on what Vance had to say, and Hegseth. When it comes to peace plans, you've been very critical of some of the plans that we've discussed in the past, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about Iran's proposal in a minute. Putting that aside, though, is Hegseth right? Was his assessment fair? Last time I checked, crude oil was down about 0.75 of a point today, but it's still over $74 a barrel. The majority of the sentiment that I'm seeing online and hearing is that people are getting antsy about this conflict because of gas prices and the prices of stuff we see on a day-to-day basis. Are we finally at the end of this war?
While Vance is correct in that it is a fragile truce, do you trust terrorists to keep their word? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think it will hold for 2 weeks. The Iranians know slowing the world's economy down is their only tool left, and they made it very dangerous to pass through the straits, so our allies would put pressure on us to end it. The way Hegseth speaks there makes it sound like all of the military objectives have been accomplished. He made it sound like we're done. That's a good sign that it is over, but there's still many different parts that have to be negotiated. Oil is actually down 21% compared to 1 month ago. The high gas prices were always going to be something that hurt the Trump administration. This is a conflict on the other side of the world that Americans at home do not see. They just see the prices they pay at the pump going up significantly. Based on the way Hegseth and Vance both spoke there, it might be over. There are still things that need to be worked out, and we're going to go through that plan. But that plan is mostly what Iran wants. It doesn't say what they're willing to give up. Time will tell. Prices will come back down. It'll take a little time, but it's getting better.
All right, well, let's get into the peace plan we've been hearing about from Iran today. Following recent hostilities and threats of infrastructure strikes by the U.S., Iran presented a 10-point peace plan to President Trump. This led to the 2-week ceasefire announced yesterday. Talks between U.S. and Iranian delegations are scheduled to begin this Friday in Pakistan. While the U.S. has described the Iranian proposal as a workable basis, several points remain significant hurdles for the Trump administration. Here are the main points. Number 1, the Strait of Hormuz, reopening the strait under the coordination of the Iranian armed forces. Now, that sounds like a terrible idea.
It would mean they still had control over that waterway.
Yeah, which I don't think is good for anyone. Number 2, maritime protocol, establishing a secure transit protocol for the waterway. Number 3, end of war, an end of hostilities against all axis of resistance components.
This is Iran's way of trying to get Israel to stop dismantling their proxy groups like Hezbollah. It's a bargaining chip, but we'll see. I don't know if Israel will like it, but they may not have a choice.
And number 4, U.S. withdrawal, full withdrawal of U.S. forces from all regional bases and deployments.
This one just isn't going to happen. We have many bases in the region for security purposes, and there's no chance we would give them up. If we do, I will be the first one to criticize Trump for it.
Yeah, this one would be an absolute terrible idea.
Yeah, given the fact that NATO doesn't let us use our air bases either. We'd have no bases anywhere.
And next up, number 5, compensation. Iran wants full payment of reparations for war damages. I don't ever see us agreeing to that one.
Yeah, another one that'll never happen. That money would be used to rebuild their military, and that will be a non-starter for the Trump administration. How would the average American feel if the Trump administration sent a massive payment to Iran after we spent billions to destroy their military? It would be an enormous loss politically if Trump approved that plan.
Yeah, they would destroy him for it. Number 6, primary sanctions, and number 7, secondary sanctions. Immediate lifting of all primary U.S. sanctions and secondary sanctions.
These could happen. There's still a chance the regime collapses after the conflict is over because the economy is in the dumps. They want sanctions relief to give them a chance to avoid that. This is something we could do, and if they don't follow through on their part, you could always reimpose those sanctions. And the secondary sanctions would primarily allow other nations to do business with Iran, which could help their economy. I could see these being lifted under some conditions.
Yeah, like you said, this could be one of those situations where they lift the sanctions for now, but they could always bring them back in later. Now, number 8 is UN resolutions. Termination of all UN Security Council resolutions against Iran.
This would be more of a political win for Iran, but it would not change much. As I have said before, the UN is useless. When China and Russia hold a seat at the table, is it ever going to be a useful tool? Most of the resolutions involving Iran are arms embargoes and sanctions against their missile and nuclear programs. The question would then be, how long would it be before they went back to trying to get a nuclear weapon?
And then we have number 9, the IAEA resolutions. Termination of all IAEA resolutions regarding the nuclear program. And number 10, frozen assets. Release of all frozen Iranian assets and properties worldwide.
There is a big question we don't have an answer to. Has the regime changed its opinions on getting nuclear weapons? My opinion is no. They want the sanctions relief to rebuild their economy, and it would only be a matter of time before they will try to get their hands on nuclear weapons. If the framework that comes out of negotiations is close to this, it means Trump lost the negotiations. The most important part for us in the short term will be ensuring the enriched uranium is removed and that they don't try to enrich more in the future. You also need to make sure they don't build thousands of missiles to hide behind when they try to get that nuclear missile. Crisis averted for now, but we will be talking about this in the future. 15 to 20 years from now, I would not be shocked if we're in the same boat.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. As a country that's been going after us for 75 years, it seems pretty likely that down the road, we're going to run into this again.
I would also anticipate that's why Israel's not too happy with the ceasefire. I think deep down they know that without regime change, this problem will come back up. It's only a matter of time. I find it very difficult to believe the same people that were chanting death to America are suddenly going to stop after we bombed them. I just don't see it.
You think at this point, Israel was pretty much looking for the complete and total destruction of Iran?
Of the regime running the country, I believe they were. They have a history of going after the leaders first. Now, Iran knew that that's probably what Israel would do. They just didn't expect them to get so many of the top leadership with the first strike. They had a succession plan to survive. The question now will be, is the economy damaged enough to cause that collapse? Because we aren't doing it militarily now.
All right, well, we've been going on for a while about Operation Epic Fury in Iran. Let's shift over to the government shutdown. We are officially on day 54 of government shutdown for the Department of Homeland Security. The House is expected to vote this week on the Senate-passed partial funding bill. After initially rejecting the Senate's plan, Speaker Mike Johnson signaled an about-face last Wednesday. The House will take up the bipartisan Senate bill that funds parts of DHS, including TSA, the Coast Guard, and FEMA, through the end of this fiscal year. This would end the pay freeze for those employees. Funding for ICE and Border Patrol will be separated and handled later through a process called budget reconciliation. This will allow Republicans to pass funding for those agencies without needing Democratic votes, and then bypasses the policy reforms Democrats have been demanding. If the House follows this two-track plan announced by leadership, the partial shutdown for the TSA and Coast Guard could be resolved by this weekend. Now, I think a lot of people are pretty sick of this story, and I have a clip from Stephen A. Smith that I think sums this up pretty well.
How about do your job, period? So you go to work and you don't get paid, but meanwhile, the politicians, they're the ones getting paid at the same time that you don't? They're disgusting. 480 TSA workers have quit. 61,000 went unpaid. I'm going to say, as disgusting as it is, it gets a bit worse when you're looking at the president of the White House and they're projecting that he's made, him and his family, over $1.4 billion. You've got other politicians that are doing what they're doing. Either way you slice it, they're okay, the Americans get screwed, and we're left to talk about the horrible job that they're doing.
Now, I will say I don't agree with him about President Trump, but everything else, for sure. Regardless of how much money Trump has made, he's not the one who's voting to keep the government closed. He's been trying to get TSA workers paid for weeks. The shutdown has nothing to do with him.
I am in the majority, and I am sick of this story. I hope all the congressmen and women who went on vacation while the TSA agents worked for 54 days without a check feel good about themselves. This isn't even the first shutdown we've had, so they have caused immense pain for some families. Stephen A. is kind of right, but it's less on the president and more on the other congressmen. If you ever needed something to show you where the priorities of politicians were at, this was a good example. They didn't care if American families couldn't afford to put food on the table if it gave them a chance at a political win. Both sides are guilty, and they all do it.
Now, this leads us into a clip from Bill Maher's show.
It seems like every problem that we used to be able to solve like adults is a hostage situation. Yeah. Does it strike you that way, that everything is like, unless we get everything we want? Because Trump upped the ante here at one point to, okay, I'm not doing this unless you also throw in the trans issue.
Yeah.
Trans.
Or I think I don't think it takes a genius to understand that we are like ill as a country. We're not functioning the way we feel, most Americans feel proud of our political system. And it used to be that, you would argue and of course have disagreements, but you get in a room, kick everyone out, just put your head down and get a deal. And that has become, I've been a senator now for a year and change. And that is just not the way it's functioning. And I'm from Michigan. We are a practical people. And 80% of the people that I talk to cannot stand the way politicians are representing themselves right now, period.
That goes back to what we've been saying about people trying to throw ridiculous stuff into bills just so that they can get someone on their side. It doesn't feel like it should be so hard to come up with funding for something that's been part of our government for years. The same thing that President Obama had no problem using to deport millions of people.
We used to be able to do that. Bill Maher is right, and both sides are guilty of trying to hold things hostage. We have formed groups similar to cults. Members of Congress do not think for themselves anymore. They, for the most part, follow the party line. Democrats are very good at staying in line. Republicans have a harder time because some members just won't do it. There's just not many of those people anymore. But when the margins are this thin, as they are now, a few people can hold immense power over their own party.
All right, well, we gave enough attention to the government shutdown again. Let's move on to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is currently presiding over a major case on birthright citizenship. Trump versus Barber heard oral arguments on April 1st. The case centers on an executive order issued by President Trump in January of 2025, which seeks to end birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. to parents who are either undocumented or on temporary visas. such as students or guest workers. A final decision is expected by late June or early July 2026. So what exactly is birthright citizenship? That comes from the 14th Amendment, which says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. Trump's administration argues that subject to the jurisdiction implies a requirement of permanent legal residency. They contend that children of those here illegally or temporarily do not owe sole allegiance to the United States and therefore are not automatically citizens. The challengers argue that the 14th Amendment and the 1898 precedent United States versus Wong Kim Ark clearly establishes that jurisdiction simply means being subject to U.S. laws while physically present on U.S. soil.
Well, it will be very interesting to see how the Supreme Court rules on this. Most of the world does not grant citizenship just because you were born on their soil. That's very much a North and South America thing. Citizenship is generally granted by way of the parent, meaning at least one must be a citizen for the child to be. The argument that they will align with your way of life simply because they were born on your soil is false. We let Soleimani's daughter live in the country, and she pushed anti-American rhetoric all the time. If the person doesn't want to assimilate, and if their parents aren't citizens, they won't be taught what a great place this is, so you shouldn't just give them citizenship, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I listened to some of the audio from court. Now, one of the arguments was that if you go to another country and break their laws, you have to serve the time in that country. If someone steals your purse, their police have to help you get it back. Now, Matt, if my wife has a baby in your house, does that baby live with you now? Does that baby have a right to live with you?
If your wife was that close to giving birth, she would not be allowed in my house. In the off chance she was, your child will be deported. The ruler of this kingdom knows where you live, and the child will be returned.
Yeah, it's such a stupid argument. Just because you're visiting somewhere doesn't mean you belong there or have the right to stay there.
Yeah, and in many countries, you will serve the time and then be deported. You have to go through the punishment, but since you broke the laws, they don't want you there anymore. This court case has really been another perfect example to show everybody, though, that Ketanji Brown Jackson is just a diversity hire for the court. Her argument that being somewhere means you have allegiance is just absurd. She just has a great way of making terrible arguments.
Yeah. Now, here's another interesting fact that a lot of people don't know. If an Israeli woman comes to America and has a baby, as of right now, that baby is a United States citizen. But that baby is also an Israeli citizen and is subject to serve in the Israeli army. Israel isn't the only country that does this either. There's quite a few countries that require men and women in some cases to serve in their army even if they're a United States citizen. Iran would try to use you as leverage if you went back to Iran being a dual citizen. They wouldn't even recognize your U.S. citizenship or your U.S. passport. They would call you a traitor. All of these countries grant citizenship based on the status of the parents. And that's exactly how it should be here. You become a citizen of the United States if and only if one of your parents belongs here.
Yeah, that's a very good point on Iran. If you had American citizenship and didn't work for the regime, when you went back to Iran, you will have about a 2-minute trial and you will be found guilty of treason.
Yeah, but there's so many people telling us that Iran is just such a great place, right?
There are people who actually say that women in Iran have it better than women in America. That is just wild.
Yeah, absolutely absurd.
You are so disconnected from reality if you actually believe that.
All right, let's move on to our last segment here. On April 2nd, 2026, President Donald Trump fired Pam Bondi as the 87th United States Attorney General. Her tenure lasted roughly 14 months.
President Donald Trump gave an address on Saturday in preparation for Easter Sunday.
This Holy Week, I'm proud to join with Christians across the country and around the world to celebrate the most glorious miracle in all of time, the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We also celebrate the extraordinary resurrection of faith and religion in America. As I have often said, to be a great nation, you must have religion and you must have God.
Well, this is a massive shift in tone from previous administrations, notably the Biden administration that opted to recognize Transgender Day of Visibility more prominently on Easter than the actual resurrection of Jesus. President Trump is replacing Attorney General Pam Bondi. According to CBS News, Bondi's termination is due to a lack of major prosecutions and failure to aggressively pursue Trump's agenda, most notably a lack of urgency in releasing all of the Epstein files that were ordered to be released in his executive order. Now, as a result, Bondi has been subpoenaed specifically to testify to her handling of the Epstein release. Several Democrats have claimed that Trump's firing is an attempt to keep her from testifying before Congress. But Representative Mace has set the record straight, stating that Bondi was subpoenaed specifically by name, not just by the title of Attorney General. So she is still scheduled to testify before Congress on April 14th.
In a post on Truth Social, President Trump called Bondi a great American patriot and a loyal friend, stating that she would be transitioning to a much-needed and important new job in the private sector. The primary public speculation for her exit was her handling of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation files. Despite her public loyalty, the White House reportedly felt that she was not moving fast enough to satisfy the president's demands. President Trump appointed his deputy attorney general and former defense attorney Todd Blanche as the acting attorney general. Current EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin is rumored to be the top contender for the permanent nomination. So we know the media's reason for why Bondi was fired. What do you think it was, Matt?
I tend to agree with Trump's reasoning. It took way too long to release the Epstein files. Epstein did not work for the government, so it never should have been hidden in the first place. That alone would be a reason for firing her, given Trump has taken a lot of crap from the media because it wasn't released. They used him not releasing it as evidence that he was in it and he was guilty. The media claiming she was fired so she wouldn't testify is just completely false. As you heard in that clip, she was called by name, not by position. She's still going to testify. I would agree with Trump when he said she wasn't moving quick enough.
All right, Matt, it is time for our blind ranking segment. We are going back to the same category as I gave you on the last episode. I got 2 tickets to the UFC White House event. Who am I going to give those tickets to? Fire away.
This is going to be a tough one for you. First name up, Bruno Mars. And I'm going with celebrities who have been in the news of late.
Bruno's been in the news of late? What did he do?
New album.
Okay. Bruno Mars. Man, I don't know. That's tough. I mean, he's got a lot of good music. I guess I'll split the middle here and go 3.
Going number 3. He's got some fighting stories, too. He used to get into a lot of scraps with people. Next name on the list, America's sweetheart, Sydney Sweeney.
See, this is tough because, well, I mean, I guess it's kind of easy to tell.
Your wife would kill you.
Which side of the aisle she's on. She probably is a Republican. Also true. Yeah,
she is a easily identifiable Republican.
Yeah, and she's got good genes. That's for sure. So
great genes.
Man, this is tough. You're backing me into a corner here. I'm gonna put her at 2.
You have to hope the wife doesn't hear this episode, right?
Yeah.
Well, how about another lady for you? Kim Kardashian.
Oh, man. It's either 4 or 5 for sure.
You could ask her about her new boy toy, Lewis Hamilton.
That is true. That is true. Being an F1 fan, I could get some insight into Sir Lewis. I'm going to put her at 4.
Number 4, okay.
I feel like there's someone worse coming.
It depends how you feel about some of them. The next one's a tough one. You have 1 and 5 open, and next up is Beyonce.
5, for sure. Definitely 5.
And
Although, if I took her, I would have to ask her about her husband's involvement with Diddy.
and your number one will be Justin Bieber.
I'm really not mad at that. Justin gets a lot of hate, just like Nickelback used to, but I think
but people would love to switch places with him.
Oh yeah, he's a broken guy of late, I think, and he's not really in the news too much anymore either. So
He would be an interesting talk too, I think.
yeah, and he's a hockey fan, so there's that.
And worst comes to worst, as a Maple Leafs fan, you can always make fun of how bad his team is.
Yeah, true. So that's not bad. I don't hate the list. If I could redo it, actually, I don't know if I would switch anyone around. I'm happy with 4 and 5. Maybe I would move Bruno up to 2 and put Sydney Sweeney at 3, but that might be the only adjustment that I would make.
Well, you went Justin Bieber at 1, Sydney Sweeney 2, Bruno Mars 3, Kim Kardashian 4, and Beyonce 5. Was it the Lewis Hamilton part that bumped Kim Kardashian up to 4? I thought she would go number 5 when I made the list.
It was. I also don't think that she knows as much or would be as outspoken about like political stuff.
True.
I think that I could find more common ground and have a conversation with Kim Kardashian more than I could with Beyonce. Plus, with Kim, I could ask her about Caitlyn Jenner and that whole situation.
It's an interesting family history, that's for sure.
I would have to grill her about Kanye, for sure, though. All right, everyone, that is it for episode 48 of the Republic Brothers podcast. Before you click away, please hit the subscribe or follow button. New episodes drop every Monday and Thursday. However, we will not have an episode next Monday, so keep an eye out for the next episode next Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.